So, what is your definition of a high performing athlete?
Well, a high performing athlete, it just depends on what level you're talking about. If you're talking about at the professional level, well, then there's expectations based on the level that they're at.
Mm-hmm.
If they're at the college level, the high performing athlete is anybody that can make that team because it's such a rigorous, it's difficult to make a team.
Mm-hmm.
At the high school level, I would think that is within a realm of possibilities because you're going to have people who can obviously play professional baseball that are playing high school baseball. Then there's people who are making the club for the high school team. In general, for a physical education sense, it is performing at your highest capabilities, possibilities, potential on a trend.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time. You're not going to have your best day all the time. You're going to have bad days or whatever.
Right.
But your trend should be something that is, your highest output. And a coach's job is to see what is your possible highest output and then to get that from you and then to stretch that a little bit, push you to a spot where it could be a little more, you got to find, everybody does something really well, so you got to accentuate that. People a lot of times, especially in college, tend to go away from that and they work on their low spots.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to really accentuate what you do well and then keep improving the things that you don't do as well to make you a complete player.
Right. Okay, so what are some of the key areas that you help your athletes perform during challenging situations?
So I'll do a couple of different things. At the college level, when I was a university coach for baseball, a lot of it's mental because every person there is a top-notch player. They're a high-performing athlete. They were their best person at the high school.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all of them have the potential to be drafted, even though they're not all drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Some people there on money or whatever. So the thing that there is that you got to try to prepare them for, here are the scenarios that you're going to encounter, and then you have to try to put pressure on them because practicing without the pressure is not game-like. So you got to try to make them game-like situation. But you still have to get them to a point where they believe in themselves more. So you might tell them something that means nothing, and you know it means nothing.
Yeah.
But you tell them that because it's going to get a higher, output from them or better efficacy as a player and self-belief. The high school, in my opinion, is trying to get the best out of your players. Is that what you're saying, right? Is that they need to believe that what they're doing is as good as anybody else. So, for instance, I coached girls golf at the high school, and we won league through all 3 years that I coached there, and they'd never played golf before. But when they were working on something, I'd be like, "That's it, you got it, keep doing that, keep exaggerating that." And over time, they start to have a self-belief like, hey, if Coach Smith says it's good, then it must be good. And every time they do it, like, "Oh, good for you, that's perfect, that's awesome." And when they're making mistakes, you got to tell them, you got to teach them that the mistake is closer to the real thing than when you are successful with bad mechanics, because those bad mechanics are going to hold you back a little bit.
Right.
So you're constantly trying to develop them, but then you don't want to develop them so much with new mechanics or good mechanics that they actually start failing too much because they're trying to implement perfect mechanics or trying to have a vision of what you do. You still got to be able to see, react. There's a situation, you react. You can't be going through a thought process every time. But so it's a balance because we always talk about thought processes, but once it's time to hit or once it's time to do, you got to be able to do. So,
And so what is your method? Well, I think you kind of went over this, but what is your method in motivating your athletes to perform at a high level?
Yeah, number one thing, all athletes need to have self-belief.
Right.
So I can tell you that a lot of great athletes, we use baseball, for instance. I played professional baseball, played college baseball, and then I coached at the university too. The number one thing about baseball players is they always think they're better than they are. And that is a byproduct of you're playing a sport where you fail. If you fail 70% of the time, you're actually one of the better players. And the difference between someone who fails 70% of the time and somebody that fails 75% of the time is a big difference. Batting 250, batting 300. 300, guys get paid for that.
Yeah.
Guys are all conference for that. You hit 250, you're considered not a good hitter. But if you're talking about 1,000 at bats, you're talking about only 50 more hits.
Yeah.
Right? If you're talking about 500 bats, it's only 25 more hits. And if you're only talking about 100 at bats, you're talking about less than 10 hits. But it's a big deal because you don't have that many at bats. In college, you're going to get about 200 at bats. So you're trying to make the person believe in themselves. That's the number one key. when everything else is equal, coaching them up is making them be able to react and believe in themselves and do the execution when it's time to execute. And doubt is the worst. When that creeps in, then people start thinking of too many things as they're trying to perform.
Right.
And that's the worst, by the way. And when I listen to the Golf Channel now, the professionals, that's what they talk about all the time. These guys are the best people in the world, and they can't get it in the hole. Why? Because they think they can't anymore. Somehow they've lost their mojo.
Yeah.
And same thing with great hitters. You've been a great hitter your whole life, and all of a sudden you go to a place, and they don't like this style or that style you're hitting, and now you start to do poorly. I'm saying that they don't do poorly because the mechanics messed them up. They do poorly because their whole life they've been told they were the greatest, and now someone's changing you, and they're trying to tell you what's going to be better for you, but you won't buy into that because this guy's not telling you you're the greatest anymore.
Right.
So you've lost self-doubt, which now comes out in performance.
So last question, how do you enhance your athlete's mental and emotional strength?
So there's a big balance between when do you push and when do you pat on the back. Sometimes you have to really get after people. You gotta push them hard. There was a famous coach, John Scalinas at Cal Poly Pomona. He used to do this presentation, and he would put on goggles, and he'd have a torch, and he'd have a rock candy, a jelly bean, and a marshmallow. Right? I told you about that before. But he would say, you put some torch under the marshmallow. That's easy to weed that person out of your program. They're mentally weak. They're gonna melt all over the table. The jelly bean is the difficult person to get out of your program because they look like hardness, but with enough heat, they'll still melt all over the table like the marshmallow. And then the rock candy is the person that you keep putting torch on, it's gonna stay. And his point with that was a lot of team building things you make people showing up to practice 5 in the morning and running. That will weed out jelly beans, he said. That's the person who's gonna ruin your year. The jelly bean. You'll think that person's rock candy, and that jelly bean is just not all in. They're not mentally prepared, and it's difficult because when you go to the college level, everybody has so much great talent. Every person looks like a superstar, So you start getting ahead of yourself, like, oh my God, he could do that, man. But that guy might not be able to get it done. So sometimes the guy who doesn't look as good actually is the better mentally prepared, and so we're just constantly trying to test guys. At the college level, you work on, we have a psychologist that works with us. We talk about psychocybernetics, visualization. Those are all things that we use quite a bit. They liken it to if you're going to perform an athletic task. We try to teach them a routine because if you're trying to call a phone number or trying to call your house, it starts with this number and it ends with this number every time. Yeah. But when guys do, when the game speeds up too much or when it becomes too difficult or when there's a lot of pressure, they start in the middle of the process. They step in and try to hit instead of thinking, okay, what's the guy been throwing? What did he throw me last time? What did he throw me last time we played? What has this pitch been doing? What have I been doing? You take all those things into consideration and you start your process with that. Do I stick my right foot in? Do I tap the plate? Do I grab my jersey? Whatever their little idiosyncrasies are, that's what makes you have your routine down. So we really, in a college level, we're trying to stress routine and self-efficacy. At the high school level, you can tell guys that they're better than they are, and they'll rise up to your. And you know what? We do the same thing in the AVID program for students in middle school. Yeah. There's a lot of people there that are not performing at the proper level yet, but we fill them with the self-belief and give them the strategies of how to do it and give them the routines. And next thing you know, when they do those over time, they work themselves into that college student in training. Yeah. And if you're a high school player and you want to be in college, you got to consider yourself a college player in training or a pro player in training. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, you can't take someone who's never played the game before and has terrible mechanics and terrible athletic ability and turn them into a superstar. Mm-hmm. But you can make them way better than they are. Mm-hmm. And when you have a high school team, you're limited with the number of people. You really have to, a lot more coaching at the high school level. Likewise, you're at a school that doesn't have such a deep pool of players. You really got it. You earn your money as far as making people believe, but in order to do that, you got to have sound teaching techniques, and mechanically sound, mentally and spiritually sound. Are you taking it out too much? Are you pushing them too far? Are you pressing them too much? And then are you babying them too much? Those are all the things that you have to check all the time. So.
All right, sounds good.